Well, hello, welcome in. We are officially on day 12 of the transmission series. And listen, this has been the most crazy experiment I've probably ever done in my business. And I've done some pretty crazy experiments. And I really had to check myself. The last couple of days, I have noticed, especially since I started testing the visibility lab idea, which, listen, I am still not convinced it's going to work. It may work. We don't know. I will let you know on the other side if this whole new non-launch kind of strategy is working. And if it doesn't work immediately, what is the runway? So this is going to be an ongoing experiment. But here's what I've noticed is that my throat over the last couple of days has started to feel a little bit tight and restricted. And I noticed it when last night I was folding a bunch of laundry. The kids came in from school and they're always wild and crazy and they're throwing their book bags and they're tossing their shoes and they're talking about violin lessons and what happened in the playground. It was just mayhem. And I was trying to be heard over the fray and talk to my husband about our plans for the weekend and things that needed to get done and deliveries that were expected. And I noticed in that moment that my throat started to close up, and I just looked at him and I said, my throat is closing. I'm not being heard. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because we have a little more time, is this paradox between speaking and showing up and being visible, but also being heard. And I really want to go somewhere where you might not be ready for me to go, but I'm going to go there anyway. I want to go into talking about the chakra system, because this is what I dig into very much in story and somatics. But I'm going to give you a primer right now, because this has been transformative for my life, like transformative. So what we need to talk about today is why you're talking all the time, but nobody is really hearing you. You post every day. You're showing up on stories. You're sending the newsletter. You're doing all the things that marketing people tell you to do, and yet nothing is landing. Or worse, you are getting responses back that fry your energy. I was going to say frazzle and fry at the same time, so that became like phrasal. Fry your energy. People who are not resonating at the frequency that you're resonating. And then things like your engagement is lukewarm and the right kind of inquiries aren't coming through. And as a result, people aren't buying. And there can be lots of reasons why people don't buy. But today we want to focus in on this whole concept of like why you're talking and nobody's actually hearing you. Because what ends up happening is you start to think you need better content. You need better hooks. You need a better and or different or new strategy. And it's not always the case. What might be happening is that you have some sort of energetic block. And I'm going to give you, this is like a 12-minute redux of this. There is no way that this gets solved in 12 minutes. This is an act of awareness that you develop and you work with over time. So this is not going to be a silver bullet. But what you might have or might be experiencing is some sort of blockage, tightness in the area of your body known as the throat chakra, which is quite literally an energetic center that sits right around your throat. And if you are on YouTube, you can see me like holding it right around my voice box. The paradox is you can be talking and using that energy constantly, but still be completely blocked. So in Sanskrit, the name for this chakra is Vishuddha. They all have Sanskrit names. And I'm learning this all because I am just a couple weeks from getting my next training certification. So bear with me. But it is the fifth chakra because chakra systems start at the base and go all the way up to the crown. And it is your throat center. It is called Vishuddha. And it's not actually about volume. It is about presence and aligned consistency. And it is very much associated with truth-telling. Truth-telling is about frequency. It's about magnetism. This is what we know, right? From going through this transmission series. This transmission series is me activating my Vishuddha for you. in a way that I feel is going to empower you, in a frequency that is going to elevate both me and you. So how do we expose the pattern if we think that we have a block? Here's what it actually looks like. And I go in depth on this in Story and Somatics. So I'll put that link in the show notes and certainly in the description. If you want to go in depth on all of these blocks, what they look like in your business, what they look like in your life. And then there is a subsequent, I'll call it an exercise for something you can do to soothe that chakra so that it can start to soften a bit. But here's what it looks like. We talked about this. You're posting every day. You're saying what you think people want to hear. You're performing in your content. You are doing what I would say is like your best impression of what you think a successful person in your industry needs to sound like. And you might even be in sales conversations and you're pitching. You're pitching what you think they want to buy instead of naming what you actually see. You're showing up as a force rather than a mirror. And it might even translate to a larger scale where you're speaking, you're on podcasts, you're on stages, you're being asked to show up and moderate and do all these fancy things. And you're being asked to, respond to queries in your DMs. People are saying, what do you think about this? I want to know what you think about this. Tell me what you think about this. But what's happening is you're either leaning into somebody else's energy and or you're using someone else's language to express your truth. Someone else's frameworks. Really what this looks like. And my husband and I had this conversation the other night about good covers of awesome songs. What it looks like is you're a cover band. You're like pretending to be the Beatles, but you're not actually the Beatles. You're not playing your own music. And that is actually a sign of being somewhat blocked. You could be partially blocked in one area and open in another. I mean, this isn't like a be all and end all, but what ends up happening is when there is that slight hiccup, your body actually knows before your brain does. And then your body knows before it shows up in any measurable metrics in your business. So we talk about leading and lagging indicators in business. Your voice and your body is a leading indicator. How it shows up in your business, in your revenue line, lagging indicator. Because if you operate for a year with a blocked throat chakra, hello, I'm telling you this story because I did this all of last year. It will eventually show up on your bottom line in your business. It won't be right away. Right away, what you'll feel is the manifestation of that block in your body, which is why it's so important as a business leader to learn how to be in your body. Because I will die on this hill that this is the most important leadership skill that you can develop, especially in this age of AI, is feeling the alignment in your body and knowing that it's the right way to go. So what it can look like is like a tight jaw. A lot of folks I talk to, they're like, I have chronic TMJ. And I'm thinking, oh, there is an energy there. There's probably maybe some physicality there with the way that your jaw is functioning and so on and so forth. And there are ways to release that with like acupuncture and exercises and gua sha and certain things like that. But the act of being tight in your jaw and your throat could also energetically really be aligned with the things you're not saying. With you being a cover band, but also knowing that you've got this other song that's living inside of you that you're not letting out. It can also be, and this was the one that I had. This was the one that I had, I will admit, when I was in the newsroom constantly. And anybody who has worked in a newsroom has this. It's just something that we have is a chronic sore throat or bronchial infection, something like that, like laryngitis. And it's like persistent. And then the other time in my life when I had this chronic sore throat, it wasn't sore, but my voice changed. All of last year, my voice changed and I wasn't podcasting as much. And I found it really difficult to do my voiceover work that I do for certain not-for-profits. Because when I opened my mouth to speak, even in team meetings or client meetings, the voice that came out of my mouth was not my voice. It was this like raspy, scratchy, like Demi Moore, Kathleen Turner smokes a pack a day kind of voice. And it was really discouraging for me as someone who has built my whole life using my voice as a broadcaster. And I couldn't understand. I was hydrated, I was eating well, I was sleeping, and yet there was this odd scratchiness in my voice. And now I see that as a leading indicator for that all of last year, pretty much, I would say 60 to 75% of what I was doing was out of alignment with what I actually want to do. And it was expressing, I was sending proposals that didn't, I'm looking back at how I was last year. I was like, wow, I was really wearing a lot of masks. I was really like performing. I was like a cover band and not even that good, right? I wasn't even worth the cover cost to go see the cover band at the bar, right? And so it manifests in my throat. And I started to work through all of this at the beginning of this year when I recognized what was going on. And now I hear my own voice again. I don't have that chronic soreness and raspiness, that unexpressed truth. The other way that it might manifest, and I'm still working through this. So actually the reality is I think I have all of these. I've had all of these, is chronic tension in neck and shoulders. I still have it on one side of my body that I work on every single day through acupuncture, osteopathy, massage therapy, somatic yoga practices that I am doing, yin yoga that I am doing. I am working on it every day because it's that bad for me. But what that represents is the effort it takes to hold back. It forms when you are in a constant brace, right? When your shoulder, if you're watching on YouTube again, when your shoulders are always up, but you don't really realize it and that this is your natural posture. So I have had to learn how to drop myself right down. And even in doing that, it's very uncomfortable because it's sore. It's always, always sore. And I think this is years. It wasn't just last year in business, but I think this is about 20 years of me bracing myself for having to speak stories that were horrific and hard for me to rationalize. All the things that I had to do when I was a news anchor, right? But every time I soften now on that side of my body, whether it's in my meditation or in my yin or as I'm practicing and I can feel it open up or crack or I can feel the fascia moving again, I remember that is part of my softening and coming back into my own alignment. So even though it's still sore, it's like a therapeutic pain, right? The other couple ways, and I won't give you too many more here, but is this frequent clearing of your throat. I don't necessarily have that, but I have been in rooms where people have that, where as soon as they get up to a podium to speak, it's like all of a sudden they have to clear their throat like every 2 sentences. That is your body. That is not your brain. That is your body trying to clear the channel. It's trying to make space for whatever needs to come out. That is a somatic response. That is something happening in the energy center that is completely attached to the physical. Your throat is such a physical part of your presence. You can't forget that, right? I don't know how many muscles are in there, but there's like so many muscles in there. So here's the question. If you have any of those and you're like, oh my goodness, I do have that. I get a lot of sore throats. I cough a lot. I have a tight jaw. I if any of this is resonating, then let's explore a little bit, right? Where are you holding back on your truth? Where might there be a slight block in that pipeline? Where are you, put another way, performing what you think truth is supposed to sound like? I'll put this in context. I started feeling awesome when I was like, I am not going to launch the way that I was told to launch because that is an act of performance for me. That is me launching the way I've been told launching is supposed to sound. It's supposed to sound like urgency. It's supposed to sound like scarcity. It's supposed to sound like pressure tactics. It's supposed to sound like selling, my income as a way for you to start feeling like you want my income. I don't know that you want my income. I don't know. But that's what launching is supposed to be. So I'm not doing that anymore, and my voice is stronger. The cost of continuing to act with a block in this center is that your content stops converting because it's not valuable. You're not being consistent in your own energy. People are able to feel the difference. They can feel the performance. They might not be able to identify it, but they can feel it. Performance doesn't create trust. It might create accolades, but it doesn't create trust. Truth is what creates trust. So the cascade effect then is that your sales conversions fall flat. You are saying the right things. You're following the framework. You're following the plan, but people are not buying, or the wrong people are buying because what you're not saying, you're not actually saying what you need to say to be truly seen. You're trying to lead them gently instead of just saying, here's the thing. You're coddling them with a framework and with, this is how it's supposed to feel. Instead of just being like, dude, this is it. Take it or leave it. Here's what it's going to cost you. Here's what's possible. Okay? I already said this, but the next thing is that, the worst thing is that you attract the absolute wrong clients, who are the ones who exhaust you, the ones who need to be spoon-fed, the ones who don't fully align with the full vision you have for your life and your business. Because here's why. You are not pre-qualifying them with your truth. You are pre-qualifying them with a performance. You're not being polarizing enough to repel the things that don't align. You're trying to be too palatable. You're pandering. So you end up with people who need you to be someone who you energetically, fundamentally are not. And then you get just exhausted and burnt out. And hello, I'm telling you this because this is exactly what happened with me, and it is what happened with a bunch of my clients. Through the pandemic, this is what happened. And this is why you're seeing so many people say things like, I'm quitting social media. You're seeing people like myself pull their business onto platforms that feel like you can be your full professional self or your full creative self or whatever, your full self. I am loving this YouTube journey. It is slow and I am a beginner, but I am loving it. I have always loved the podcast place. So I am staying here in this energy. But this is why you're seeing so many leaders in their field say, F this, I'm moving somewhere else, because they're exhausted of the performance requirement of that old system where every post is an effort. Every sales call is draining. Every DM is like, oh, are you freaking serious? If you hear yourself saying that, let's look at your throat chakra for a hot minute. Okay? So somewhere along the way, it wasn't safe for you to tell the truth. And you also have to recognize that you need to forgive yourself for that. Maybe you were punished as a kid for speaking up. Maybe you had a bad coaching experience like I did. Maybe you were told you were too much, you were too intense, you were too honest. So you learned to temper that down and just buy into a system that allowed you to feel safe. Your next step after recognizing it is to forgive yourself for doing that. You were protecting yourself from being rejected. But now that you know better, you can do better. Right? Now that you know better, you know that nothing bad is going to happen to you if people disagree with you. Right? The worst that can happen is that you attract the right people. I think that's a pretty awesome consequence. So I want you to just think about this. Look at it through the lens of the energy of your throat. What is happening physically in your body? Because it is a leading indicator of what is going to happen in your business. I guarantee you. Here's your homework, your little devotional, if you will. I want you to practice just saying one true thing that you have been holding back, whether it's in your content, in a conversation, in an email, just one thing. And notice what happens. Notice what happens in your body. Notice what happens in the world. That's it. That's your only homework. I'll be back tomorrow.